In a future America, a terrible drought has left the land barren. People are desperate, even willing to kill for water. Most people have fled, but the home family remains, clinging to hope. Ernest, the father, believes that with enough water, their land can be green again. His son, Jerome, too young to remember the lush past, shares his father's dream. One day, two criminals try to break into a small building on their farm. Ernest catches them in the act and shoots, killing one. The other begs for mercy, claiming he was searching for water. Ernest doesn't believe him and shoots him dead. Jerome, witnessing the violence from a distance, wishes he could have helped, but Ernest simply tells him to call him Dad. Inside the building, they find a pump, but it's dry. Their only option is to push their mule on, even without water. They encounter a group known as the Watermen, who control the water supply. Through a risky exchange, Ernest manages to get some water for his family. He warns Jerome to be cautious around the Watermen, as they are dangerous and unpredictable. Their desperate attempts to buy more water from the Watermen fail due to exorbitant prices. On their way home, their mule collapses from exhaustion and pain. Ernest, unable to watch the animal suffer, shoots it dead. Jerome, overcome with emotion, insists he could have ended the mule's suffering. Back at the farm, Mary, their daughter, serves them a simple meal. With no running water, she washes the dishes and dirt. While Ernest listens to the radio and Jerome draws pictures, their only forms of escape. A noise alerts them to Mary sneaking out to meet her secret boyfriend. Determined to replace the lost mule, Ernest and Jerome go to an auction. They bid against Sam's son, Flem, for a robot called Simulate Shadow. Despite the fierce competition, Ernest wins the auction, but at a steep cost, adding to their growing debt. They want to see their mom, Catherine, in the hospital. She couldn't walk because she had a bad accident. The hospital had a special machine to help her walk, but it was really expensive. They needed to buy it to bring her home. After spending time with Mom, they went back home. On the way, they saw Robbie and Suze with their baby. Ernest was mad because they were using their baby to get help from people. They didn't want to help them, so they drove away. They stopped at a gas station to fill up their car. Ernest even drank some of the gas to save money. Then, he felt sorry for Robbie and Suze and gave them some water. Robbie and Suze were thinking about selling their baby because they were too poor to take care of him. Ernest told them not to do that and said he would help them. Later, someone named Flem showed up at their farm. He was Mary's boyfriend, and they were secretly dating. Flem wanted to borrow the robot, but Ernest said no unless his dad, Sam, agreed. Flem got mad and said he would never help them with their farm. Ernest and Jerome went to meet some people who controlled the water. The robot helped them go really fast. Ernest wanted to get water to their farm, so he started talking to the water people. He dug a hole to find an old pump. Ernest told Jerome to go make some friends, but Jerome just wanted to help his family. On the way home, they saw Flem driving really fast. At home, Mary was trying to wash clothes using the vacuum cleaner. Ernest didn't want her to go outside, so they argued. Mary said she was old enough to do whatever she wanted. Ernest said he just wanted to keep her safe. Mary said she liked Flem more than her dad. She tried to run away, but Ernest caught her. She was really sad and said her dad was bad. Ernest was upset and locked her in her room. One morning, Ernest and Jerome woke up to bad news. Their robot, Sim, was gone. Ernest thought Flem stole it and went to his house, but Flem wasn't there. Sam, Flem's dad, said Flem drove away that morning. Sam told Ernest that the farm used to be his, and Flem was really sad about losing it. Even though the land was dry, Flem still wanted it. Ernest decided to go look for Flem in the mountains. But when he got there, someone hit him hard and he fell asleep. When Ernest woke up, he was in a bad place. The water people said he stole their stuff using Sim. They started to fight, and Ernest had to use a knife and a gun to escape. He ran away and found Flem sleeping. Flem had stolen Sim, and the stuff to make Ernest look bad. Ernest woke Flem up and tied him to Sim. They walked in the hot sun to find the water people. Flem was mean and made fun of Ernest. Ernest was so mad, he made Flem fall down. They were both really thirsty, but they only had alcohol to drink. Ernest got drunk because he liked to drink. Flem pretended to drink and said the water people wanted to kill him. He even offered Ernest money, but Ernest didn't believe him. Ernest tried to stand up but fell down because he was too drunk. Flem hit Ernest with a rock, and Ernest hit his head on a big rock. He remembered a bad accident he caused when he was drunk. When Ernest woke up, Flem was pouring bad stuff in his mouth and yelling. Flem went to the farm with Mary. Jerome was worried about Ernest and went to find him. He found Sim at the water people's place. They said Ernest died because of an accident with the robot. When it was time for Ernest's funeral, Mary came back. They were both very sad. Flem took them home in his truck. At the farm, Jerome was so angry he hit the robot with a hammer. Flem stopped him and said it was okay to be sad but not to break things. He said he would help the family and told them that Mary was going to have a baby. Flem has big plans for the farm, and Jerome agrees to let him try. In the afternoon, Flem takes supplies to the waterman and asks Caleb to put a water pipe on the farm. At first, Caleb refuses, but then Flem blames him for Ernest's death since Caleb's rifle and knife were found with the body. Scared of the possible consequences, Caleb agrees to divert water to the siblings' land. A few days later, the new farm pump is installed, and Flem works hard all day to plant and grow wheat, which is watered by sprinklers. The family can now enjoy actual showers. Some weeks later, Jerome sees a little leaf on the ground, and eventually the land is covered in wonderful plants. To celebrate, Flem and Mary get married and tattoo each other's initials on their hands. During the party, Flem drinks and keeps thinking about Ernest's death. A couple of days later, Sam shows up at the farm with 2 men from the bank. It turns out Ernest's debt is huge, and they want Flem to pay it. Flem scares the horses with his bike to look tough, and Sam scolds him, explaining that nobody ever wanted to buy the land and Ernest had it because he never moved off. Thanks to the water and the crops, the bank will be able to sell it. So Flem must pay if he doesn't want to lose it. That night, Flem puts him on his truck and picks up Robbie with his baby. He pretends they'll be asking around for some prices, only to sell the baby against Robbie's will. Freaking out, Robbie asks for his baby back, and the buyers open fire, killing Robbie. They try firing at Flem too, who shoots back as he runs away, leaving the machine behind. Sim is caught in the exchange, and the damage makes it activate a mode that guides it back to the original factory. The next day, Flem pays the bank with the baby money, but he tells the siblings that he sold Sim to Robbie. Meanwhile, Sim makes it to the city and is found by its builder Calvin, who finds the owner's information and calls the farm. Jerome picks up the call and gets suspicious, so he runs to the local market. He discovers Flem talking to Suze, who is keeping a doll in her arms pretending it's her baby. Noticing this, Jerome tries talking to them, but Flem quickly takes Suze away. Later at the farm, Jerome asks Flem about Robbie, but Flem says Robbie took Sim and abandoned his family. Determined to discover the truth, Jerome announces he'll visit his mother, but he actually takes a bus to the border. However, the guards don't let him pass because he's a minor without a guardian. At that moment, Anna approaches him and offers to help him cross if he pays. Jerome agrees, and Anna puts him in a truck full of chickens. In just a couple of hours, the truck reaches the city, and Jerome sees it for the first time. He reunites with Anna, who takes him to the factory but only takes half the money as payment. She explains that the round trip is a scam, and he doesn't need a guide to go back because nobody will stop him from leaving. Before she leaves, Jerome asks if she ever met a guy named Ernest, but Anna doesn't recognize the name. Afterward, Jerome meets with Calvin, who shows him all the functions of the machine. It turns out Sim's eyes are cameras that were made to capture the slope for reforestation and have recorded everything Sim has seen. Calvin teaches Jerome how to use it and gives him some privacy. Jerome gets emotional when he sees his dad again, but this turns into horror when he learns that Flem killed Ernest. It turns out Flem tied Ernest to the machine and sent it in the direction of the waterman's camp, making it look like Sim had lost control and dragged Ernest to his death by accident. Jerome has a breakdown in the office. In the evening, it starts raining over the farm for the first time in over a decade. Jerome soon returns and plays it cool, asking Flem how he got Sim back. Flem is confused and checks the barn, shocked to see Sim standing there with no damage. He says Robbie must have brought it back out of guilt. A few days later, Jerome visits Catherine for real and promises to take care of her like Ernest did. One afternoon, Flem and Jerome are hunting animals to keep them away from the crops. Flem misses all his shots and passes the rifle to Jerome, blaming the weapon for his failure. Jerome is very tempted to shoot Flem, but instead kills a deer, proving the problem is Flem's aim. When they go home, Jerome hides the rifle in his room. During lunch, Jerome mentions he got a call from Robbie, who wants to find Flem. This annoys Flem, and he angrily accuses Jerome of lying. Mary scolds Flem for his behavior, while Jerome insists he's telling the truth. Frustrated, Flem leaves the room. The next day, Flem gets a letter, supposedly from Robbie, asking him to meet at the cliffs because Robbie is in trouble. Flem suspects Jerome wrote the letter but decides to go anyway. Before leaving, Flem looks for his rifle, but Jerome says he took it to the shop for repairs since Flem had said it wasn't working well. Realizing he needs to play along, Flem apologizes for his earlier outburst. Taking only a knife, Flem heads to the cliffs with Sim. He calls out for Robbie but falls into a hidden pit, breaking his legs. Flem screams in pain and begs Sim for help, but the machine doesn't understand. At that moment, Jerome shows up, holding a rock, and just stares at Flem, making Flem realize that Jerome knows the truth. And Flem knows Jerome set him up. Flem begs for mercy, but Jerome just watches. Flem screams for help again, begging Jerome to think of his sister and baby. He talks about accidents and feeling sorry. This makes Jerome really mad, and he shoots Flem. When Jerome returns home, he lets Mary think that Flem abandoned her and doesn't tell her the truth about how Ernest died. With the money from their crops, they can now afford real food. The siblings agree they can finally buy the machine so Catherine can come live with them. Jerome erases all the footage from Sim, ready to start fresh.